on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good evening. This is GB News Tonight with me, Tom Harwood. Now, President Donald Trump has held a mammoth media Q&A in Turnberry as he held a bilateral meeting with the Prime Minister. And he took down Britain's most notorious serial killers. Now he's joining the fight to fix Britain's justice system. Former top detective Colin Sutton is appointed Reform Party Police and Crime Advisor. He joins us live in the studio. Elsewhere, the new Online Safety Act has censored a parliamentary speech that exposed the true horrors of the grooming gang scandal. The video of the speech was designated as harmful and so faced new restrictions online. Has so-called online safety become online censorship? Well, I want to hear your thoughts on all of the above. Do get in touch at gbnews.com/your say. What do you make of the Online Safety Act? And especially how it's cracking down reporting of the grooming gang scandal. Also, of course, your thoughts are very welcome on Donald Trump's mammoth Q&A. We'll be catching up with our very own Bev Turner, who managed not one, not two, not three, but 4 questions to the US president a little earlier on today. But in the meantime, let's get an update on the very latest headlines with Aaron Armstrong.
Hi there, thank you very much indeed, Tom. Good evening to you. Our headlines: Donald Trump and Sir Keir Starmer have arrived in Aberdeenshire. It's all part of the US president's 4-day trip to Scotland. He's been at Turnberry earlier and now he's visiting another of his golf courses in Balmedie near Aberdeen. They will have dinner together with Scotland's First Minister John Swinney. He'll join them a little later. Now, earlier at Turnberry, Donald Trump set a new deadline for an end to the Ukraine war, saying that Vladimir Putin has just 10 to 12 days to agree to a ceasefire in that. Donald Trump also addressed the war in Gaza, and he says the US is prepared to help with humanitarian efforts amid an international outcry.
It's a terrible situation. The whole thing is terrible. It's been bad for many years. But it's great to hear you feel the same way that I do. We have to help on a humanitarian basis before we do anything. We have to get the kids fed. Hamas has become very difficult to deal with in the last couple of days because they don't want to give up these last 20. Because they think as long as we have them, they have protection. But I don't think it can work that way. So I'm speaking to Bibi Netanyahu, and we are coming up with various plans. We're going to say it's a very difficult situation.
Well, Sir Keir Starmer has said that the England Lionesses have once again captured the hearts of a nation. They have arrived at 10 Downing Street for a special reception following that historic win against Spain last night. Some live pictures here from Downing Street, where the full team and coach Serena Wiegmann will be meeting the Deputy Prime Minister, Angela Rayner. Now, of course, they became the first English team to win a major tournament on foreign soil and the first to win back-to-back titles with that dramatic victory against Spain in the penalty shootout. Angela Rayner, as I said, will be hosting along with the Sports Minister, Stephanie Peacock. Rayner has previously said it will be a privilege to celebrate with the team. They'll be doing these events in central London tonight. They'll also be there tomorrow for an open-top bus parade down the Mall and Buckingham Palace. That gets underway at about midday. The older brother of the Oasis stars, Noel and Liam Gallagher, has been charged with rape and a number of other violent offences. Paul Gallagher from East Finchley in North London is also accused of sexual assault, coercive control, strangulation and making threats to kill. These are alleged to have taken place between 2022 and 2024. He is due to appear in court next month. Nurses in England are expected to overwhelmingly reject a proposed 3.6% pay rise, raising the prospect of further strikes affecting the NHS. And the Royal College of Nursing have previously described the offer as grotesque. Meanwhile, it is the fourth day of 5 days of strike action by resident doctors in England. They've walked out over a pay dispute. The government's 5.4% offer has been firmly rejected. Doctors say they've lost nearly 30% in real terms since 2008. The Health Secretary, Wes Streeting, has been thanking staff who have stayed on shift. Meanwhile, the Conservative leader Kemi Badenoch says she would ban doctor strikes entirely if elected. And millions of phones across the UK will sound a 10-second siren in September as part of the second national test of the emergency alert system. The government will send out a short text at around 3 p.m. on Sunday, the 7th of September. People will be warned that it is just a test, of course. It's all part of the new Resilience Action Plan aimed at strengthening our emergency preparedness. Those are your headlines. More from me at 8 o'clock.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
A very good evening to you and welcome to GB News Tonight with me, Tom Harwood. Now, a big show tonight. Sir Keir Starmer and Donald Trump have, of course, been holding talks at the US President's Turnberry Golf Course in Scotland, where they have discussed a wide range of issues from migration to farmers. Now, our very own Bev Turner was in the room and asked the President a smorgasbord of questions. And they've just arrived at Trump McLeod House and Lodge Hotel in Aberdeen, where the US President is due to open yet another golf course. Well, earlier today, almost unprompted, Donald Trump took a swipe at the London Mayor Sir Sadiq Khan, with his friend Sir Keir Starmer meekly looking on.
Well, I'm not a fan of your mayor.
Why not?
I think he's done a terrible job, the mayor of London, but a nasty person. I think he's a friend of mine. Not sure.
Well, that's interesting, isn't it? Joining me now is Ross Clark, the journalist and author. Ross, this was a fascinating back and forth for so many reasons. Let's kick off with that first really pertinent comparison between Donald Trump and Joe Biden. Sometimes with Joe Biden, the media wouldn't get a single question before a bilateral. Sometimes you'd measure it in seconds, let alone minutes or hours. But this lasted for the best part of an hour and 20 minutes. I mean, you really got to see all, and they told all.
Yeah, well, Donald Trump and also his Vice Presidents J.D. Vance, of course, have shown an extraordinary detailed interest in UK politics since the beginning of Trump's second term. And today, I mean, to sort of go and insult Sadiq Khan while Keir Starmer was sitting beside him, you really wonder whether this is Trump's punishment for the Labour Party sending activists to campaign for Kamala Harris during the last year's presidential election campaign. So I think there's sort of a bit of that going on. But yeah, clearly Trump feels sort of entitled to sort of, go into the details of UK politics in a way which, is totally at odds with sort of convention and practice of these kind of things. I mean, you don't tend to sort of barrel into another leader's political affairs when you're meeting them on a global stage. And you wonder really why Keir Starmer agreed to do a sort of live press conference with Trump, given how disastrously wrong it went for Volodymyr Zelensky when he gave a joint press conference with the Trump at the White House earlier this year. You think, well, why didn't Starmer and his people just put his foot down and say there will be no live press conference? It's a bit of political naivety on the part of Starmer, not for the first time.
Perhaps, although it's undoubtedly the case that he managed it better than Zelensky did, mainly by being incredibly meek and quiet and deferential. In some ways, it seemed like it was Donald Trump hosting Keir Starmer rather than the other way round. Despite the fact that this is a visit from the US President to the UK, it was Mr. Starmer who drove up to greet Trump in his grand palatial residence and then be welcomed in, that shaking hands moment completely 180 degrees the other way than you'd expect from a foreign visiting leader. And then it was the Trump show for the whole time, and perhaps for obvious reasons. But very clearly, Keir Starmer has adopted a strategy of best thing is mouth shut. Which has created some political embarrassment, particularly when his allies and political colleagues are being bad-mouthed right in front of him.
Yes, I mean, it's a very impressive piece of diplomacy on the part of Keir Starmer, but how he got himself into that situation, I don't know. Clearly, Trump felt that he was entertaining Keir Starmer because Keir Starmer was at his golf resort, so he thinks he's the host rather than Keir Starmer being the host, his host as Prime Minister of the United Kingdom. But Trump has sort of made some very pertinent comments in the past couple of days about his wind farms and saying how wind energy isn't really doing it for Britain. We bring back oil and gas. Well, it's hard to argue with that. We've got all these wind farms up in Scotland which are unable to transmit the power they generate southwards because the national grid can't bear it, and we've got sort of UK energy consumers paying £1.5 billion last year in constraint payments to these wind turbine owners. I mean, it's complete nuts, and I think Trump is sort of seen as a sort of know-nothing who speaks out on subjects he doesn't understand. Well, I think he does understand that the wind energy sector in Scotland is not quite producing what it perhaps should be.
Yeah, not least to say that Ed Miliband's wind power auction, the way that we buy wind power, I mean, the prices for that, I think the highest price was £113. The Climate Change Committee is expecting this stuff to cost around £35, and they're paying 3 times the price. But Ross, I do want to ask you, aside from wind farms, let's move on to arable farms, because our very own Bev Turner asked the President a question about family farms, and particularly the contrast to how the family farms have been treated in the US versus the UK. I believe we've got a little clip of Donald Trump speaking about these farms. Let's have a listen.
We were losing a lot of farms to the banks because a loving mother and father would die and left their farm to their children, and they'd go out and borrow money to pay the estate tax, or the death tax as it's called, and they'd overextend and they'd lose the farm, and they'd commit suicide in many cases.
So that's the problem that the US was facing. Trump's recently passed one big, beautiful bill, as he keeps on calling it, raised the threshold to pay death taxes, inheritance tax, to $15 million for one farmer or $30 million for a couple. Now, in the UK, of course, death taxes have just been imposed on farmers. That was an uncomfortable contrast for the Prime Minister to sort of sit through, or perhaps squirm through.
Yeah, I mean, it's extraordinary, isn't it, that Trump should be up on the detail of inheritance tax and small businesses and farmers in Britain, and that he appreciates it's an issue. I mean, he's been extremely well briefed on these things, which was not a feature of his first term, was it? I mean, he didn't, he'd sort of... And many US presidents, they go abroad and the clue where they are half the time, let alone what the hot political issues are. And yeah, I mean, the extraordinary detail that he seems to have mastered on UK politics. Where's it coming from? Does he get a phone call from Nigel Farage every evening, or does he is there somebody employing someone in the White House to brief him on UK politics? And it's certainly a departure from the last administration, isn't it? Where you take Joe Biden somewhere and I say you wouldn't have a clue where he is. And suddenly we've got a US president who's not only realises where he is, but has a thorough grounding in all the hot issues in our politics.
Well, it's been a fascinating day to see all the antics at Turnberry. I'm looking forward to seeing what more we have. Donald Trump still does have another full day of his impromptu visit, his not quite a state visit to the UK. So we'll have to wait and see if any more gold dust emanates, but I'm sure it will. In the meantime, Ross Clark, journalist and author, thanks indeed for joining us. Well, in the studio with me now is Nigel Nelson, GBNews senior political commentator. Nigel, this was a fascinating back and forth. We got to sort of understand a bit more about how Donald Trump operates as a president. But one thing stood out to me more than anything else. Donald Trump was a man in charge.
Oh, yeah, very much so. And I think that when you describe Keir Starmer as squirming, I think that's about right. I found the whole thing incredibly uncomfortable. You could see it was very difficult. It was difficult for Keir Starmer. Bev's question about the farmers, I disagree with Ross. I don't think Donald Trump understood anything about inheritance tax for farmers in this country.
But he had a similar issue in the United States.
He had a similar issue, and he talked about that. That was very difficult for Keir Starmer, largely because he couldn't go into the intricacies of that policy any more than he could start talking about net zero and why we're going for net zero. So there was a whole lot of issues that came up because Donald Trump just got machine gunned with them by the press. And each time Keir Starmer, you could see him wanted to explain the British position, just wasn't time to do it.
Now, of course, we've all seen the Joe Biden awkward press conferences where he's almost reading off a teleprompter or cards and there's only one question allowed, if that. It's pre-briefed. There were some leaks in the United States where we understand that some of the questions were pre-vetted by the Biden White House before they were allowed to be asked. I mean, this is just completely the polar opposite attitude, which does, for us journalists, allow the opportunity for politicians to commit more news.
I mean, also bear in mind that Donald Trump does actually keep journalists out he doesn't like. So on the White House press corps, there are some organisations that can't get on it. So I don't think he's a great sort of free speech man. I do like the idea of a free-wheeling press conference. I think that's great. I think that leaders should actually do that. Clearly, it's not something that Keir Starmer does very often, and he found that difficult. Trump seems to want to conduct diplomacy basically in front of the world's media.
And do you think that works for Donald Trump? Obviously, it's a big projection of power. Do you think it's a concerted political strategy, or is it the fact that Donald Trump is just a TV star? He's always been a TV star and he loves the theatre of it.
Yeah, it's just that. I think he actually genuinely loves doing it. He loves having a good ramble. He goes off all over the place when he's doing it. He likes to be the centre of attention. That's the reason for it. But it's great fun. I mean, the fact that the world's most powerful man will sit there and be grilled by journalists, he can't know what questions he's getting, that is all to the good.
And sometimes you see the real Donald Trump. I think a lot of people have been surprised, particularly by how he started to speak about Ukraine. There was a question at a press conference not so long ago where a Ukrainian journalist asked the president a question, and he asked her, where are you from? She said Ukraine. He said, is your husband fighting? She said yes. And there was a real connection and sort of emotion there. And I wonder, just looking at sort of the way that the media reports Trump, you can often make him seem like a monster. You can definitely see that there is a humanity there when you have these sort of long-form events. Even the podcasts he did in the run-up to the election in the United States, this fed into that ability for people to view him perhaps as a human rather than a caricature.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't describe him as a monster. I'm not a great fan of his, and I think there are certain things he will do that will turn out to be a bit dangerous. But having said that, yes, you're right. I mean, he's a person, so there are human connections. He's obviously made Ukraine a big number. He didn't get peace in 24 hours as he'd promised, but then none of us thought he would. But he has made Ukraine sort of top priority. He's given Putin a deadline. Let's see if he actually achieves bringing the war to an end.
And today, of course, reduced that deadline from 50 to 10 or 12 days.
Exactly.
We haven't yet confirmed whether it is 10 or 12, but we'll stay on top of that. But Nigel Nelson, for now, thank you very much indeed. Well, coming up next, he took down Britain's most notorious serial killers, and now he's joining Reform UK's fight to fix Britain's justice system. Yes, former top detective Colin Sutton is live with us next. Don't miss it.
You want to know what's really going on in the corridors of power?
Labour don't know what to do with you half the time, and that makes you quite lethal in the chamber.
Get behind the headlines with Chopper's Political Podcast. Join me, Christopher Hope, as I sit down with the great and the good of British politics.
We'll see where this ruling takes us.
These are the stories shaping our nation. Chopper's Political Podcast, available now on all platforms. Listen in and stay ahead.
You've read the headlines, you've heard what those in power have to say. How about now we actually get to the truth?
They would pay attention.
We go beyond the political theatre and tell you what's really going on behind the scenes. For a massive council tax hike, one of the biggest in the UK. Others follow their lines, but we go off script.
You sound like a broken record, you say that week after week.
Cutting through the narratives and giving you unique perspectives. That's Ben Leo tonight, Saturdays and Sundays from 9 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
It's Patrick Christie's Tonight, and here we do things differently. It's explaining the absolute madness of this, doesn't it? It's explosive. I mean, this is very good. It's lively.
850. Your government sat there, Sean, and it did nothing.
It's controversial. And the Middle East has been in turmoil since before I was born. It's everything you need to kickstart your evening. Everyone's had their Weetabix tonight. I love to see it. That's Patrick Christie's Tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good evening and welcome back to GB News Tonight with me, Tom Harwood. Now, a lot of you have been getting in touch. Indeed, Elizabeth says, personally, I welcome Trump's comments about our government and Sadiq Khan. Because our government is so awful, you cannot blame Trump for commenting. And that is just the way Trump is. Meanwhile, Alex says, Tom, what do you make of Trump's big, beautiful bill that led to his fallout with Elon Musk? Well, personally, I have to say on this, the big, beautiful bill simply spent too much. Elon Musk is absolutely right, in my view. America is heading for a very dangerous place unless it can cut spending. And unfortunately, the big, beautiful bill wiped out all of the savings that Doge made. I can see why Elon Musk is quite so angry with it. It didn't really cut where it should have done. But Andy says, why is everyone so surprised that Trump knows so much about British politics? His mother is from Scotland, after all. And I suppose that is a really pertinent point. It's one of the reasons why GB News is setting up a new bureau in Washington, D.C. Sometimes it feels like the United States isn't really a foreign country, after all. They're not a different family. They're part of the same family, the same extended family. And after all, as the internet connects us more than ever before, we're reading each other's politics. We speak each other's language. Of course, we understand where each other is coming from. Although, as Oscar Wilde, I think, did once say, we are two great civilizations separated by a common language. Well, let's move on now, because Reform UK has made a bold move in the law and order debate by appointing a former top detective. Yes, Colin Sutton, who led investigations that brought serial killers Levi Belfield and Delroy Grant to justice, as their crime and policing advisor. Yes, he'll set up Reform's new Law and Order Commission and stand as a candidate at the next general election as the party ramps up its preparations for government. Well, with violent crime up 20% in the last decade and just 5.6% of all crimes resulting in charges, Sutton says it's time to get back to basics. More bobbies on the beat, less bureaucracy and a justice system that puts victims first. So, can the man who cracked some of Britain's worst crimes now help fix its broken justice system? I'm delighted to say that joining me in the studio is Colin Sutton, Britain's most famous detective, now Reform UK's police and crime advisor. Colin, great to be with you this evening.
You, Tom.
What made you jump into politics?
I think it was desperation is probably the wrong word, but it was despair. You know, I'd watched for everything, public services. The country's broken wherever you look, and of course the police service is something that's dear to my heart. I gave, you know, the best years of my life to it, and to see us in the position where trust is breaking down and where law and order is breaking down, something needs to change. And I've really never been much of a person for sitting at the side and shouting. You know, I'm a doer. So I thought, well, I'll stick my hand up and see if I can help.
Personally, I've never seen what's happened in the last couple of years before in my life. Just the number of times I've been in a shop and I've seen someone take something off the shelves and walk out, or even the low-level stuff. The graffiti you just see all over the community, which is why I was surprised to read the crime survey for England and Wales suggests that crime has actually fallen over recent years. Reform UK has now stated it doesn't believe in the crime survey of England and Wales. But how do you sort of square that circle?
Well, because if you get people sort of inured with the idea that it's not worth reporting crime, then they don't report it. And insurance is expensive. Many people, sadly, don't have insurance. They lose something, something gets stolen from them. What's the point? We know we're not going to get it back. We don't need a crime reference number to claim on insurance. It's not going to do any good. We'll just move on. And you know, there used to be ways of getting this dark figure, as criminologists call it, of unreported crimes.
Well, that's why the survey was set up, because I completely understand that people often don't report a crime. Certainly, when I first moved to London, I had my mobile phone stolen. I didn't report it. I didn't have insurance. I mean, there was no reason for me to bother reporting it. It would just waste my time, and I knew I wasn't going to get my phone back. I understand that, but the crime survey was set up to survey people randomly to ask if you've been subject to crime. Why would that be wrong?
I think we may even have sort of desensitised people to crime, you know, because that survey asks, have you been a victim of crime this year? And if you you don't actually see it as being a victim of crime, despite the fact that you actually are, because somebody stole something from you. You know, I think it could be that. Certainly the perceptions and what we think and what we see is that crime is up. And the measurable crime, the crime that always is reported, is up. So you know, if you look at it overall, I think it's gaslighting again. Don't worry, nothing to see here.
Especially the low-level stuff. The statistics do show that shoplifting is up. The things that make us feel like there's no social trust in society anymore. I wonder, how do you begin to go about repairing the sort of thing that keeps things in check? You can't have a policeman in every shop. You need a certain level of social trust. That's an incredibly difficult thing to build as a society.
Yeah, trust. I mean, any kind of trust when it's lost is hard. You know, it's much harder to regain it than it is to lose it. We've lost it. We've lost trust in police. We've lost trust in politicians, for that matter. And there's something that, you know, needs to be rebuilt. The first step on rebuilding trust is engagement. You know, why... I said this today at the press conference. Why do we concentrate so much on crimes that are suffered by a noisy minority? Why are we sending six police officers around to arrest a journalist for a tweet? And when somebody living down the same street who's had their bike stolen or their shed broken into can't get a police officer to come out for love nor money? And that's the kind of thing that builds trust. And once we start developing that trust, there'll be a kind of a snowball and exponential rise, because people will realise it's worth it, realise that if they report it to police, they'll get competent, well-trained, sympathetic officers who turn up and do something about it. And so they tell their friends.
Yeah. Anecdotally, I know nothing that has decreased the trust in police more, certainly amongst my peer group, than people who've had their phones or laptops stolen, an almost daily occurrence in London. And the modern technology that these things are, you can see the geolocation of that stolen item. You can go to the police saying, my phone or my laptop, or even you know, your vehicle, as the Sunday Times reported recently, or your bicycle that has an AirTag on it, or whatever it is. You know where it is. And the police won't bother to go there to retrieve it.
Yeah. I think it's appalling. I can't understand the concept. And what I don't understand is nobody joins the police service to police social media. People who join the police service, by and large, they're brave young men and women who want to serve their community and want to do a decent job. So how have we got to the situation where they're not doing the things that their community wants them to do? And then you have to start looking, well where are the influences on them? Because I know lots of current police officers still, for various reasons. And I don't know any one of them who wouldn't want to turn out and retrieve your phone or your car or whatever your piece of property is and arrest the person who stole it, because that's what they want to do, it's what they do. So we've got to look more, why are these individuals on the front line who want to do the job and want to serve their community, what's preventing them?
Yeah. And so is that going to be the work of your commission? Are you going to come back with a report? What's the process going to be?
Well, I got a phone call yesterday afternoon saying, oh, we could have a task force as well, because I'd agreed to be the advisor. So that's not a conversation we've had yet. I know what I do. I don't want a cast of thousands. I don't want something that reports over months. You know, it's something. I've had some very encouraging responses already today just with the publicity. I've approached no one, but I've had half a dozen people come to me and say, I'm willing to help you. I've got something to offer. So, you know, I'm optimistic with that. And what we need to do is to... You can't start with a blank sheet of paper because policing has to go on. But what you can do, you can say, what are the limiting factors? What are the things that are causing this mismatch? Because our police service has never, in my view, been further away from what the community wants it to be than it is at the moment. And we need to narrow that gap as much as we can.
Absolutely fascinating stuff. Well, Colin Sutton, thanks indeed for joining us and talking through what is a big campaign for the Reform Party. I'm sure it's not the last we'll see of you over this summer. But of course, yes, Colin Sutton there, Britain's most famous detective, now Reform UK's police and crime advisor. Up next, it's a related discussion, of course. We've been policing tweets, not streets, and free speech campaigners are warning that the new Online Safety Act is already silencing political speech. Indeed, speeches like this one.
One of the victims from Dewsbury was told by her rapist, I quote, "We're here to all the white girls and the government."
Yes, that speech was genuinely censored by Twitter after the implementation of the Online Safety Act. We'll dig into it next.
Good evening, this is your latest GB News weather update coming to you from the Met Office. Now there could be some fairly heavy showery rain for some of us, especially towards the south as we go through tomorrow. But before that, we do have a band of rain that's coming in from the west. That's because although we have an Azores high to the southwest of us, there is a frontal system coming over the north of this. And this is going to bring a fair bit of cloud across parts of Northern Ireland as we go through the end of today, and then rain sweeping in. And then that cloud and rain is going to feed into western parts of Scotland, England and Wales as we go through the early hours of tomorrow morning. Further east, it's staying dry with some clear skies, under which temperatures may just about dip into single figures. Elsewhere, though, it's a relatively warm night, quite humid as well. Humidity is high to go along with the fairly damp weather across western parts. Then, as we go through tomorrow morning and starting off across much of Scotland, it's actually looking largely dry. A few spots of rain here and there towards the east, but some bright spells too. A wetter, cloudier, greyer picture towards the far west, however. Similar across Northern Ireland, the rain will be starting to push through, but a damp start for many here, and also pretty wet across western parts of England and much of Wales. Some fairly persistent rain, and there could be some heavier outbreaks of rain mixed in with it. Further east, it's a drier start to the day, and there will be some brightness, but as that whole frontal system makes its way gradually southeastwards, we are going to see many places across the east turning cloudier and some outbreaks of rain feeding in. Worth bearing in mind that the rain's going to break up a little bit, turn more showery, but could turn quite heavy across southern parts. Could even be a bit of thunder mixed in, but staying dry towards the northeast of Scotland. As we go through into Wednesday, and that high towards the southwest I mentioned does try to become a bit more dominant. And so whilst there will be some showery bursts of rain around, they're not looking especially heavy. They're going to be quite scattered, and so many of us will stay largely dry with some dry spells in between any of those showers. And then some more changeable weather to come as we go through the end of the week, but some warm sunshine as well. Bye-bye.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation, isn't it?
No,
because the failure is
you're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff.
Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood.
So join me on Jubes & Co weeknights at 6 p.m, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good Afternoon Britain isn't just about us. The wonderful thing about this programme is it's about everyone watching. It's an interactive programme.
Well, there absolutely is something to see here, and we're going to be talking about it more.
Whether it's breaking royal news, please bring us up to date, or indeed a particularly punchy speech in the House of Commons.
Very, very curious.
We bring it to you live, and then we bring you live reaction as well.
That's Good Afternoon Britain, weekdays from midday.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good evening and welcome back to GB News Tonight with me, Tom Harwood. Now, the Online Safety Act is under fire with free speech campaigners warning it's already silencing political speech. Yes, posts about the grooming gang scandal have been flagged as harmful under the Act. That has meant everything from a parliamentary speech to official court documents have faced online censorship. Like this speech from the Conservative MP Katie Lamb back in April, when she condemned Labour for backtracking on promises made to respect grooming gang inquiries.
The men who preyed on them were predominantly Muslim, generally either from Pakistan or of Pakistani heritage. One of the victims from Dewsbury was told by her rapist, I quote, "We're here to f*** all the white girls and f*** the government."
Yes, genuinely, that speech restricted now online. And if you're under 18 or you don't want to give an online company your credit card details or a scan of your face, then the British government blocks you from reading this tweet. Yes, this is a tweet exposing the court documents behind the arrests of grooming gang individuals. In graphic language, admittedly, but instead you now see this message: restricted access due to local laws. Extraordinary stuff. Well, joining me now is Toby Young, the director of the Free Speech Union. Toby, the Online Safety Act had a lot of provisions that came into effect on Friday. Since then, VPNs on the App Store are now the top 5 downloaded, or the top 5 of the top 10 downloaded apps in the British App Store. Do you think the public is waking up to the threat to free speech that the Act seems to be?
I think they are, Tom. Yes. I mean, it's hard to ignore when you try to access content like a speech by a sitting member of Parliament and you're told you can't see it due to local laws. I think that's going to hit home with a lot of people. They're going to realise that a lot of content that they should have access to, they're being blocked from seeing. One of the clauses in the Online Safety Act, which is supposed to protect free speech, speech of democratic importance, content of democratic importance, hasn't come into force yet. There's also another clause saying that the social media companies, when deciding what posts to remove, what posts to restrict, have to have particular regard for free speech. That hasn't come into force yet either. So one of the reasons we're in a bit of a pickle is because the age restrictions, as you say, came into force on Friday, meaning that if you can't verify you're 18, a lot of content isn't available to you. But those various clauses designed to protect our free speech and prevent over-removal, they haven't come into effect yet.
But this is a tightrope for these companies to walk. Of course, they're going to rely on algorithms to deliver this sort of stuff. And if they're given a choice between blocking content that could be harmful versus following those clauses on free speech and open debate and democratic process, they're going to fall on the line of censorship.
We always predicted that the social media companies would err on the side of over-removal, as you say. I think one of the difficulties is that the Free Speech Union and other pro-free speech lobby groups, a couple of years ago, 3 years ago, when the Online Safety Bill was going through Parliament, we lobbied against the legal but harmful clause. So originally there was a clause which would have enabled Ofcom, the new social media regulator, to fine social media companies like Facebook, like X, 10% of their annual global turnover if they didn't remove content that was perfectly legal, but whom a senior politician judged as potentially harmful. Now, we managed to get that removed, but they kept in the obligation on social media companies and the right to fine them if they don't discharge that obligation to remove content that's legal but harmful for children. Now, one of the reasons lots of people aren't able to access content like the trial transcripts from grooming gang trials on X is because X can't verify that they're 18, and X has judged that that content is potentially harmful to children, even though it's perfectly legal. And we always feared that if we kept in this clause insisting that social media companies have to remove content that's legal but harmful to children, that social media companies would conclude that right of centre content likely to fuel support for parties like the Conservatives and in particular Reform UK, that would be much more likely to be removed than left of centre content content making you more likely to vote Labour, Green or Lib Dem. And so it's proved to be. The social media companies have decided that content which supposedly fuels far-right narratives and potentially social unrest can only be seen by people who can verify that they're 18 or over. But Novara Media, The Guardian, the BBC, Sky News, that of course is completely accessible to people of all ages.
Well, isn't this interesting? Because there have been videos of protests outside migrant hotels that have been blocked under this law now too. And of course, there are going to be lots of law-abiding people who simply don't want to scan their face to a company online before they see some content. So it's not just restricting it to under 18s. But what do you say to those who say, well, those transcripts of the grooming gang scandal, those trials, are utterly horrific. They go into great detail about the harm caused to young girls, to children. They describe rape quite graphically. The speech that Katie Lamb gave in Parliament did the same. It used swear words too. What do you say to the people who say that we should do absolutely everything in our power to make sure people under the age of 18 can't read or hear this stuff?
I say, the government's just announced it's going to lower the voting age to 16. How will 16-year-olds, 17-year-olds be expected to make informed decisions at the ballot box if they're unable to see any content about the grooming gang scandal? I mean, it's just completely absurd. Social media companies need to exercise much better judgment, and they need to protect content that is democratically important for our short-to-be newly enfranchised 16 or 17-year-old voters to see if they're going to make good decisions at the ballot box.
It's a strong point. It's hard to see how that contradiction actually aligns with current government policy on the voting age. But Toby Young, Director of the Free Speech Union, really appreciate your time this evening. Thanks for joining us here on GB News. Well, in the studio, I'm pleased to be joined again by Nigel Nelson, our senior political commentator. Nigel, the Online Safety Act passed with a supermajority in Parliament under the previous government. Bits of it are only just coming into effect, but do you think the government bit off more than it could chew?
I think we're going through teething problems at the moment. I think Toby hit it on the head just a second ago when he said that social media companies must exercise better judgment. We're going to the point where, because of how high the fines might be, what those companies are doing, they're erring on the side of caution.
But isn't that inevitable?
Well, yes, it is inevitable. But what I'm talking about, a teething problem, is that it will iron itself out eventually.
Well, surely it will require legislation to be ironed out.
No, I don't think so. I mean, the whole thing is that if you've got social media companies like X who've got no age verification, they're saying, right, let's be ultra careful about this. Gradually, they can be less ultra careful once they understand the law better. And still you've got the protections for children, so they're not going to be able to see self-harm and suicide websites or get access to hardcore porn. So from that point of view, the Act is working. This bit of it obviously isn't, but I think it probably will over a period of time.
But politicians always go in with the suicide content. I mean, the number of websites that are devoted to suicide is absolutely minuscule. Like 99%.
No, they shouldn't be there at all.
No, of course. But
99%
of the Act is removing things. I've seen a bicycling forum that has had to shut down because they're subject to the Act, they don't have any turnover, they're a voluntary community, it's a forum online, they can't afford the regulatory compliance, they've shut down. There's a forum discussing cider on a website called Reddit. That's had age restrictions on it because it's to do with talking about alcohol. A stop smoking subreddit also
that should be
shut down.
An alcohol website actually should have an age restriction.
Should it? You're allowed to drink alcohol under the age of 18, you're just not allowed to buy it.
Well, for that reason, that you'd have some kind of restriction on it. I mean, I don't see a problem with that. Where there is a problem is if you're censoring a debate in Parliament, or you're censoring something like the grooming gang inquiry. Yes, that is wrong. That should be accessible.
But here's the thing. Every single multimedia company is just going to say, look, Britain's not a market for us if they risk 10% of their global turnover. Even Wikipedia has now taken out a lawsuit against the British government because they've been categorised under the Act as a Tier 1 company, subject to the most stringent regulations. Of course, Wikipedia can be edited by anyone. That's the model of the website. But that doesn't work under the Act.
No, but the model of social media originally, or the model of the internet was anything goes. It became perfectly clear after that anything can't go because of the harm it can cause. So are you saying we should have a Wild West internet where absolutely anything can appear and anyone can access it?
But that's not the internet we have. We have laws in this country. The problem with the Online Safety Act is it creates this category of legal but harmful and makes illegal online content that would be legal to read in your local library.
Yeah, but the kind of thing you'll get in your local library will not be a book about how to actually commit suicide or how to self-harm. These are things that you find online, and the main purpose of the act is...
But it could be a book that references self-harm, and there could be content that is restricted online that references that. And we get into incredibly murky territory, because whenever a politician designs a law, they say it will work like this, but there is a thing called the law of unintended consequences.
Of course there is. And this is what I mean about we have to sort this out as a gradual process because it's going through teething problems at the moment. And my view is that will actually eventually get straightened out. So we have to give it time to bed in. As long as the Act is working as it's meant to when it comes to protecting children, that is the most important thing.
I just wonder how many children will instead, and how many adults for that matter, download virtual private networks,
I know, the VPN,
and get around even the restrictions that existed before the Act was put in place. I mean, that's the real risk the government's running. But Nigel Nelson, thanks indeed for joining us again. Coming up, you won't want to miss this one. Britain's pubs are closing at an alarming rate, with more than one closing its doors every single day. But could the Chancellor's plan to cut red tape turn the tide? Could outdoor pints and extended opening hours breathe new life into our beloved locals?
Dinner under the stars tonight?
That reminds me of our travel insurance.
You mean All Clear Skies?
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GBNews Travel Destinations Forecast.
Hello there. We've got some severe thunderstorms on the way across many parts of Italy and the Balkans on Monday and Tuesday. But the good news is the extreme heat across Greece and Turkey is slowly easing, though there are unfortunately still a few wildfires around in places. Those showers also across parts of Italy, maybe the Pyrenees as well. But most of Iberia dry, sunny and settled, as indeed it will be across parts of Madeira and the Canary Islands. Lots of sunshine on the way and very warm, if not hot, over the next few days.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GBNews Travel Destinations Forecast.
Britain was once the envy of the world. But look around. A nation that no longer knows what it is or where it's going. A country that's broken. How do we fix Britain? How do we bring it back? Friday night with Matt Goodwin at 8 p.m.
only on GB News.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
He can say whatever he wants.
A straight-talking show where all voices are heard.
And, you know, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country.
There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor.
Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Daubney, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m, weekdays, here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Westminster's full of talk, but out here, it's the real world.
Am I allowed to talk then?
No, that's it. This is where it matters, real people and real lives. That's what politics is all about.
In fact, has Trump made a good start? No.
Straight answers, no spin, and just a couple of pints. How many fingers have I ever got up?
About 10.
So join me for Lee Anderson's Real World every Friday at 7 p.m, only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
You want to know what's really going on in the corridors of power?
Labour don't know what to do with you half the time, and that makes you quite lethal in the chamber.
Get behind the headlines with Chopper's political podcast. Join me, Christopher Hope, as I sit down with the great and the good of British politics.
We'll see where this ruling takes us.
These are the stories shaping our nation. Chopper's political podcast, available now on all platforms. Listen in and stay ahead.
It's Patrick Christie's Tonight, and here we do things differently. It's explaining the absolute madness of this, doesn't it? It's explosive. I mean, this is very good. It's lively.
850. Your government sat there, Sean, and it did nothing.
It's controversial. And the Middle East has been in turmoil since before I was born. It's everything you need to kickstart your evening. Everyone's had their Weetabix tonight. I love to see it. That's Patrick Christie's Tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akweer, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
This is Britain's Newsroom, where your voice matters.
It's just astonishing. With expert analysis and honest opinion, we don't just keep you informed.
We bring you unique perspectives you won't see anywhere else.
Can't argue with any of that. When the news happens, it happens here.
On Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 a.m.
Only on GB News.
Good evening, welcome back to GB News Tonight with me, Tom Harwood. Now, Britain's pubs are in crisis, with more than one closing every single day. But the Chancellor has a bold plan to fight back, or so she says, promising to cut red tape strangling the sector. New hospitality zones could transform empty shops into vibrant bars and cafes, with fast-tracked approvals for street parties, pavement pints and extended opening hours. But could this be a lifeline to our local pubs? Well, joining me now is James Price, the Research Fellow at the Centre for Policy Studies, and Nigel Nelson, GB News Senior Political Commentator. James, is the pub in crisis, and can Rachel Reeves really be the saviour?
I'd love to see all the answers to the questions to which Rachel Reeves is the answer in these things. I think that the British pub is an institution beloved worldwide, and anything we can do to help them, we should. And they have been in crisis, I think, for a long time. I mean, I think technically pubs have been shutting down since the 19th century, but it's really sped up in recent years, and the result of that is horrendous kind of planning. It's taxes more than anything else. The fact that, you know, so much of this pint in front of me here, you'd actually be paying tax on, instead of it being for the drink itself. And anyone who's come into central London realise you pay something like £8 for a pint will be horrified by that. People have to sit down and nurse that pint all day if they do. But this idea of just creating hospitality zones, I mean, nothing sounds so ghastly and socialist as here you now have a sort of designated area where you're allowed to go and enjoy yourself, and everywhere else you must be
better than having no area where you're allowed to enjoy yourself. Speaking of, I should mention that we do have delightful pints in front of us, and perhaps we should have a little cheers. On air, if I reach over.
There we go.
Cheers, gentlemen. Well, now this is the awkward part. While you're drinking, I have to keep talking. But perhaps I'll ask Nigel a question so that I can have a sip. Nigel, is this sort of deregulation actually going to work when taxes have gone up, particularly on the service sector? Minimum wage employees are so much more expensive to hire now, thanks to national insurance and other wage rises.
Yeah, well, first of all, when it comes to the taxes, the money's got to come from somewhere. If not from there, where from? So I think we actually divide the two things away. The idea of actually getting rid of some of the restrictions on licensing, good idea. All that licensing authorities ought to be able to do is issue licences based on the individual pub, how they manage that pub, if there's any kind of problems around it, and certainly noise pollution if people nearby are fed up with that.
Isn't the problem that we've instituted drink driving laws and rural pubs no longer have a raison d'etre?
It would be a wonderful libertarian take of me to go and argue in favour of drink driving. I'm not going to be quite doing that.
Argue for self-driving cars instead. They will save the local pub.
Well, I think that's a great idea. You can do that in the morning. You know, you can nurse your hangover, and the self-driving car will have a shower built in as well to get you back to work again. I just think that the market should be allowed to do this. You go to Soho, don't complain about the noise.
Absolutely. Well, thank you, gentlemen, and all the best, and cheers again. But Jacob Rees-Mogg is up next, and thoughtfully and sensibly, you don't have a pint in front of you.
No, I haven't brought in a pint of my own homemade cider. Perhaps I can have one when I finish broadcasting this evening, but it's best I don't slur my words in the State of the Nation when I will be talking about Donald Trump and the fact that he's won one over the European Union. He's just managed to smash them, really, in his negotiations. Why don't we do a bit more than that? We've got a better deal with the US, thanks to being out of the European Union, so things we can learn from Trump.
There will be a light breeze in the morning, leading to a warm front. Boxed heat pumps, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good evening, this is your latest GB News weather update coming to you from the Met Office. Now there could be some fairly heavy showery rain for some of us, especially towards the south as we go through tomorrow. But before that, we do have a band of rain that's coming in from the west. That's because although we have an Azores high to the southwest of us, there is a frontal system coming over the north of this. And this is going to bring a fair bit of cloud across parts of Northern Ireland as we go through the end of today, and then rain sweeping in. And then that cloud and rain is going to feed into western parts of Scotland, England and Wales as we go through the early hours of tomorrow morning. Further east, it's staying dry with some clear skies, under which temperatures may just about dip into single figures. Elsewhere, though, it's a relatively warm night, quite humid as well. Humidity is high to go along with the fairly damp weather across western parts. Then, as we go through tomorrow morning and starting off across much of Scotland, it's actually looking largely dry. A few spots of rain here and there towards the east, but some bright spells too. A wetter, cloudier, greyer picture towards the far west, however. Similar across Northern Ireland, the rain will be starting to push through, but a damp start for many here, and also pretty wet across western parts of England and much of Wales. Some fairly persistent rain, and there could be some heavier outbreaks of rain mixed in with it. Further east, it's a drier start to the day, and there will be some brightness, but as that whole frontal system makes its way gradually southeastwards, we are going to see many places across the east turning cloudier and some outbreaks of rain feeding in. Worth bearing in mind that the rain's going to break up a little bit, turn more showery, but could turn quite heavy across southern parts. Could even be a bit of thunder mixed in, but staying dry towards the northeast of Scotland. As we go through into Wednesday, and that high towards the southwest I mentioned does try to become a bit more dominant. And so whilst there will be some showery bursts of rain around, they're not looking especially heavy. They're going to be quite scattered, and so many of us will stay largely dry with some dry spells in between any of those showers. And then some more changeable weather to come as we go through the end of the week, but some warm sunshine as well. Bye-bye.
Expect a warm front, moving from the kitchen right through to the rest of the house. Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
It's the final week to see how you can win big, as there's an incredible £54,321 in tax-free cash to be won. What would you spend it on? The holiday of a lifetime? Or just sit back, relax and remove some of those day-to-day financial stresses? Lines close on the 1st of August, so make sure you don't miss out. For another chance to win, text cash to 63225. One entry costs £2.50 plus one standard network rate message, or text bonus to 63225. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start at £2.50. Call 0903 686 3232. Calls cost £2.50 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB14 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 4 p.m. on the 1st of August. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
So he can say whatever he wants.
A straight talking show where all voices are heard.
And, you know, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country.
There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor.
Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Daubney, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m. weekdays, here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Westminster's